Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of From Page to Stage. I am super excited to share with you this interview with the gorgeous Catana Malinowski. She is a lady in the States who has been through some pretty interesting experiences that not many of us would opt for. In fact, I don't think any of us would put our hands up for. Now, Catana, I'm going to get you to share a little bit about your story as to what brought you to where you are now. I know that if we went through chapter and verse, get the writing thing there. If we went through chapter and verse, it would take a while. So give us the cliff notes, if you will.
The cliff notes are that I grew up mentally, physically, and sexually abused. I've been raped multiple times. I experienced abuse systemically, primarily in the education and judicial system. And I went through a toxic marriage of 30 years that I left. And I began to come into my own as an empty nester and a newly divorced person. I have since remarried at the beginning of COVID. And during my education in art in my college career, that was when I developed my program of transformational art that got me from where I was after 22 years of traditional therapy. I was still stuck in places of having PTSD, of anxiety, panic attacks. And through my work, I gained myself. I found myself. And I'm able to face those, speak about them, and not fear speaking about them anymore. I know that none of that can hurt me anymore. And so I now actually experience joy and peace, and that's what I get to help others experience.
Wow, what a story. Because, I mean, you are very familiar with trauma from multiple different directions. And you're also an incredibly creative person, because you talked about the art thing, and a lot of people traditionally consider art to be paper, a pen, paintbrush, paintbrush and canvas. But you've got various different media that you employ for yourself and also part of your program, don't you? Can you give us a little bit more of an idea of how that works?
Yes, ma'am. The transformational art aspect is everything from drawing in dust with your finger for those who swear to me they cannot draw. And I usually do bring out the inner artist. And everything to drawing to painting, finger painting, sculpture, earth art for those who are footprint conscious for what they do. It also gets them outside into the active space. There's sculpture, there's painting, and there's photography. And as I have come to embrace the beautiful world of writing.
Yes. Because how many books is it now?
I have 3 books, 2 that are international best-selling. Yes.
Go you. So you really have done the page bit in multiple different ways of expressing yourself. And
Yes.
I'm hearing from you that this has been part of your healing journey to get out the trauma in a creative way. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. If it hadn't been for the arts, and I'm also a musician, I play 7 different instruments.
Oh, just a few.
Just a few. And that was how I got through to where I am today. I did survive because of my art, because of my poetry, my writing, all of it. It's all art. Even, when we want to cook, and that's a new discovery of mine. I'm playing with food, and I get to actually, as an adult, go back to my inner child and play with my food. So yes, it is very much a healing modality, and it can help you gain that reclaim your inner strength.
Yes.
that was taken and given away. And that's another thing
That's
to,
a whole nother level, isn't it?
yes,
And
it
I'm
is.
assuming that that's something that you go into in your program.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to come back to the program in a minute, but I want to backtrack for a minute. So for you, you speak on stages as well, don't you? Because you've been speaking as part of your work for a rather long
Yes.
time. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I have spoken a little about my work that I'm now doing with the Transformational Art and Strategy Wellnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a political side, and I have been on those stages in big ways.
Exactly. And of course your legal stuff, because you
Yes.
had to be in court as well. So you're not a total stranger to the speaking bit.
No,
Okay.
happily say that.
And that's the point, isn't it? Because most people think of speaking as the scary stuff of keynoting, or for instance, sort of Tony Robbins with his rah 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 thing, and how could I possibly do that? And we go, well, no, don't. He's got that one, thank you. You do you. But you've been on plenty of different stages with different different topics that you that have been near and dear to your heart. So I'm going to ask you, which came first, the speaking or the writing?
I want to say the speaking.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right, isn't it? Because unless I don't know, maybe you've been writing, not necessarily being published, but maybe you've been writing all the way through. Did you journal through your traumatic experiences?
I didn't journal in the traditional sense. I
Okay.
did have some moments of writing down days worth of things. I kind of did that more freelance, organically.
Yeah.
I wrote a lot of poetry, I wrote a lot of stories, and that dates back all the way to the beginning when I was little. So the first thing I did was draw. Then the second thing I did was start creative writing. It was even brought up by the teachers that that was something that should be, nurtured in me. And my minor in college is journalism. So yes, writing is very much uh, a part of it, and speaking. And I didn't even realize as children how much we are on a stage.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's different in going through school in the US, because as far as I know that you guys actually are encouraged to do presentations from quite a young age, and then there's debating and that sort of thing. I mean, I grew up in the UK. We didn't have that expectation. Yes, there
Wow.
might be the show and tell thing, but even that was relatively new. I mean, my primary school years were rather a long time ago, but that sort of thing was only just sort of, I mean, the teacher read the book,
Right.
and you might be asked a question on what you've been listening to, just to check you were listening. But the show and tell was more of those sort of creative writing thing, and though the best ones were put up on the wall.
Oh.
I don't remember much about mine, but family legend has my brother had a piece of his writing up on the wall just ahead of Parents' Day, when he'd announced that we had a new toilet seat because the previous one got broken, and he went into how it got broken. And this lovely piece of creative writing was up on the wall just ahead of Parents' Night. And the teacher suddenly thought, I better warn his parents, because I don't know that they know it's up there.
I love it.
Beautiful bit of creative writing. But as you're right, as children, we're on stage. And unless we've been shut down, it's a bit of a natural habitat. Because I like to talk. Some people are very shy, and that's fair enough, because very often there's been that element of shh, and they've
Yes.
been shut down at some point. So, but you've been a creative person, both on paper in so many different ways, and the speaking out bit as well. That's wonderful. So for you, Page and Stage pretty much came in tandem, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah, love it. Love it. And thank you for sharing about your poetry. If you can still remember those and will still have access to them. Hello, Poetry Anthology.
Yes, I do have access to them.
Good, 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 good. Next book.
I'm actually in the process of writing my autobiography, and I thought it was a children's book and realized it's a book for children of all ages.
Oh, like it. Like it. I was interviewing somebody last week about their experience of writing, and he wrote loads of poems when he was a child because his mother was a published poet, and he really latched on to that, but he's never published them. I'm going, hello? I mean, poetry doesn't have the same sexy appeal as even the multi-author books, but he's on a mission to get poetry a little bit higher up the rankings. So I might introduce you to. I think you'd be.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, cool.
Because
Anyway.
I do believe poetry has its place, and some of the poetry is story-esque.
Yes. Yeah. Because that's the thing. I mean, poetry doesn't have to be da 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 da. No, it doesn't. Doesn't have to scan in that same way. But the conversation we were having was the difference between, for him, poetry has to be spoken, and for him to get the most out of poetry, he has to hear it. Whereas he prefers to consume prose by reading. So that was an interesting reflection, but that's somebody else. That's not you. Okay. So Page and Stage came pretty much simultaneously. Love it. Thank you. So in terms of, because you've also got a podcast, haven't you?
I do. I have one podcast, Transformational Art with Catana. It is on pause while I go through a physical healing journey.
Okay.
And I'm about to launch my second one.
Oh.
And it's Catana Malinowski, the People's Champ. And that is where I put my political career to work in favor of the people, to be their champion, to help them elevate their voices, to be seen, heard,
right.
and to hopefully influence change for the good.
Excellent. So is that a US only type of audience?
No, actually, these are issues that we are experiencing worldwide. So I believe this can reach a lot of people, and the more we are together as a community, the more changes we can enact. And I believe the globe is a community. I don't believe we're separate.
Well, hasn't COVID proved that? Because, okay, there's been some really painful stuff come out of COVID, but hasn't it shown that we're a global village? I mean, you and I met as a result of being online together, and that wouldn't have happened without COVID. Thank you, COVID. So yes, I love the idea of this. When are you launching this podcast?
I am waiting a week because there's some knowledge that I'm gaining that was postponed due to some other technical issues.
Oh,
and I'm going to, that would be the 13th of April that I'm going to launch that.
Oh, exciting, exciting. Well, please, we will make sure that, audience, when you're listening to this, we will have the link to it in the show notes. So please do go and listen in. This will be, you're going to be interviewing people, or you're going to be a mixture of you personally, interviews? How's it structured?
It's primarily going to be me discussing topics, specific topics. The first theme that's going to have a lot of conversation is homelessness. And then there will be interviews with people, hopefully political leaders, that will be able to hear what I have been able to gather from the public
Right.
And eventually I'd like to invite some of the public, and that's kind of a touchy thing
Hmm.
because not all homeless people are comfortable with
Yeah.
being seen. They're okay with being heard. They're not necessarily okay with being seen.
Sure, sure. So is the idea then that the people you're canvassing their opinion from, do they get hold of you almost behind the scenes so that you can then be the mouthpiece? Is that how you're envisaging it?
I'm both, they can contact me and I go out, and when I'm out, I talk to people. And for instance, I have my first survey, 20 questions already, and I've got a million more I want to put on paper.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put this, I've already done the survey myself. I've gotten a couple of other people to do the survey. So I'm well on my way to that first discussion, and found 6 questions that people sit and stop and pause. And I went, I've got the gold. These are
Yes.
the questions that I'm going to want to revisit
Excellent.
because it's making them stop and think.
Great. Love it, love it, love it. So you're doing your market research, you're getting the information ready, then you're going to be doing these themed podcasts. I love the
Yes.
idea of this. And I mean, particularly for you guys in the US, because you're in an election year, aren't you?
Yes, we are.
So it's critical timing for you guys. In fact, I think there are an awful lot of countries across the world that are having elections this year. I
It
saw
does
something
seem
about there are 7 or 8 different countries that have got major elections happening. Um, so yeah, nice timing, Mrs. Well done. Great, great job. So we've got then the page and the stage coming simultaneously. You've got this podcast that's about to launch, and we'll make sure, audience, that you've got access to the link on that. This is going to be primarily on YouTube. Is it going to be audio as well? How are you planning to structure the work?
It's audio and visual, and it will be housed on YouTube.
Okay. So are you going to do the audio version as well, sort of up on Spotify and Apple and Google and whatnot?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Love it. Thank you very much for sharing that. That's exciting. And then getting back to your program, do you see the two of them working together, or are they generally kind of separate?
Actually, it just dawned on me how much they're intertwined and how they go together, because I work with women that have experienced domestic violence and violence
Mm-hmm.
in general, some type of traumatic incident that really turned their world upside down. And that actually is included in, is a big part of a traumatic experience. Some people may not have even had the trauma until they're homeless. So
Yes.
this program, and I've already been doing my program with people on the street level,
Mm-hmm.
meeting them where they're at and working with them one-on-one. And I do have a group program that when enough people want to do it as a group and feel comfortable with sharing with others, then that's available too.
Oh wow, that's really great stuff. Because as you said, I mean, I think the stats are that the highest increase in homelessness is among women, solo women, who are more mature, sort of empty nesters, postmenopausal, everything's fallen around their ears. And that's the highest rise in homelessness. I think that's a global statistic. And so they're your ideal audience, aren't they?
Exactly. And I know that here in California, where I'm located, is, I believe, I want to say 60 something percent of the homeless population are in my age group.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
it's and yes, it's a worldwide issue,
Yeah.
and it can be, I believe, in my heart and in my core and in my soul, it can be fixed.
Yes. Where there's a will.
There's a way.
Exactly. And where there's not, there's an excuse. That's another matter entirely. So
Yes,
we've got the page to stage, page and stage working simultaneously. You're working on both directions with your creativity, both in the art and the speaking and the writing. And that's all coming together so beautifully for your own healing and then healing for other people as well. And you're saying it's primarily the women that you're working with.
yes. And I have recently worked with an older gentleman,
Mm-hmm.
and I am so happy and excited to share that his heart was functioning at 20% before we started working, and now it's working at 40%. And the doctors can't explain that. They just know that they see more happiness and more laughter and more confidence. And that was not one that I was expecting.
And you got a
I've,
physiological
yes,
change. Brilliant, isn't it? Oh,
it's,
fantastic.
and we're all connected that way. We are whole body. We're not pieces, so it makes complete sense. And
Yes.
it's working for me. And it's just, I cried.
Oh, I
The
don't
tears
blame you.
came.
I'm
Yeah,
feeling all goosey at the you're telling me this. I'm going, oh, how precious is that? Yeah.
yeah,
Doesn't it make a difference? And this is the more you speak about what you're doing and the results that people have had, the transformations people have had because of the work that you're doing, the more it feels, yeah, this is my role in life.
yeah.
I'm making a difference. All that crap I've been through, and dear lover, you got more than most. It's not been entirely in vain.
No.
Because it's given you, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, you know, your trauma to triumph, your mess to message, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And you're living proof of it. So, oh, Catana, thank you for sharing that. So your program, as you said, is you can opt into it at any particular point. If there's a group of people who want to work as a group, then you will open up a group container for that.
Correct.
But there's the option at the moment of doing the solo work with you.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Now, as we wind up, what the audience, okay, audience, I'm going to dob you in a bit. Do you know that word, dob? It's an Australian term. It means sort of tell on you. Scott's word would be clipe. There's an awful lot of people in the audience who have written a book or contributed either a full solo book or a contributory author who've poured their heart and soul into writing their story. And it's been a healing experience, a cathartic experience. But you want me to talk about it now? Really? Oh, come on. It was a tough enough trot getting it down on paper. So one of the reasons that this podcast is getting going is we're giving authors who may be a bit reluctant to tell their story to a wider audience. You were saying about that your group program is fine for people who are okay to share the trauma, particularly around the violence that they've been through, either domestic or generic. And some people aren't ready for that yet, particularly if they're coming from the position of public speaking is the rah, 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 and that's not me at all. And so for them, the podcast is an ideal first toe in the water for speaking about the stuff that you've been through. We both work in the healing space because I'm very keen that authors don't speak from their wounds, but they speak from their scars. You can still tell the story of how you got to where you are now. And you, again, you're a living example of this. Still share a hint of the emotions that went with it without re-traumatizing yourself. And actually, nor the audience, because sometimes it's pretty gruesome stuff that people have been through. And if you tell it warts and all, the audience is going, oh, and you can be traumatizing them too. So the point for this podcast is to get authors to a position where they feel familiar. I won't necessarily say comfortable, but familiar enough on a one-to-one conversation that we can pull in the audience as well, of sharing those stories. So on that note, have you got any gems of wisdom that you can share in terms of how you embody your written words, how you bring those to life?
Oh my goodness. I believe I do that through my podcasting
Mm-hmm.
and my activism. It may not seem like a space that's challenging, yet it is. And a lot more of us are on soapboxes, and I use that term because I'm dating myself. The proverbial soapbox, most of us have that voice. And it's I would say that the nugget of wisdom is take the box.
Nice.
Say
Just
what you
get on
need.
that box and get on with it.
Yes.
Love it. Have you ever seen somebody on a soapbox? Literally.
Yes, ma'am.
Good fun, isn't it? Because at Hyde
It is.
Park Corner in the UK, which is where it is known as Speaker's Corner, I don't know whether they still do, but there was for a time, they literally had one of the old packing cases that had soap in it originally. And there were steps up the side, so you literally stood on the soapbox at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park and spouted forth. So yeah, Hyde Park Corner, Speaker's Corner is still in operation as far as I know.
Very nice. I'm going to have to make a point of visiting.
Oh yes, do. Let me know if it's still there. Otherwise, it's a mighty long time since I was in London. Let's just say that. Okay, so get on with it, basically. Stop overthinking and just get on with it.
It's a lot like having a conversation with your family. We usually have the ability to find our voice in most cases, not every case, because I realize there are some times when that can be the catalyst for keeping us down and keeping us quiet. But if we're stepping into our own and we're reclaiming ourselves, it's time to step on that box and let it go.
Love it. And as you say, the getting onto a podcast to start with that conversational stuff, it's not too threatening, is it? It's like having here's another cultural reference for you. It's like having a yarn. Aussie speak for having a conversation, a story. You're yarning. You can tell a story on a one-to-one without it being too uncomfortable. If you trust the person that you're talking to.
Yes.
So that's the point if you're getting onto podcasts, and this is particularly directed to you, audience, when you choose the podcast that you want to go on, be selective. Who's the audience that the podcast is aimed at? Are they the people that you need to speak to? Because otherwise, yes, you might be practicing your talking bit, but what's the point if it's not the right people? Get in front of the people that need to hear your specific message. And then you can trust the host to ask the right questions. There are all sorts of other things around being a pod guest in that respect. On that front, I'm going to ask you quickly, Catana, with your podcasts, are they, please give me a list of questions that you want me to ask. Are they more organic? How do your podcasts get structured? But most of the time you're giving the content, aren't you? Sorry, that was
well, Transformational Art with Catana, I do interviews.
Right.
So that's a side-by-side interview. And I will ahead of time have written out some questions that I run through. It's like thinking out loud.
Right.
On that same note, when the conversation happens, everything unfolds organically.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think those are the best ones, because okay, from a speaker's perspective, if you learn your script, it's like learning lines. If at some point there's a minor blip in your concentration and you lose your line, you can lose the rest of what's coming, because one phrase builds on the previous. And as a TEDx trainer, when I've actually been coaching for the TEDx team at the University of Western Australia, my first thing I say to the speakers within earshot of the TEDx team is, learn your material, don't stick to it word by word. And they go, because they have had to fact check the actual script. And I said, well, yeah, you can use the same information. Make sure you don't include anything else that these guys haven't gone, okay, tick. The point is, if you learn it like a script, you use one part of your brain. If you learn the material that makes up the script and you can speak to that, you use a different part of your brain. And that actually involves more of the limbic system, the emotional bit of your brain. And you can speak with head and heart far more than the robotic, mechanical, I'm reading from my script, even if you do put some emotion into it. So that's something that, if you can, have the organic conversation.
Yes.
So much more flowing. Catana, thank you so much. Is there anything that I have missed off?
No, folks can find me on Facebook and message me on Messenger. I'm in the process of updating my website, so as soon as that link is available, I will forward that to you.
Thank you. We'll make sure that then goes updated show notes. Love it.
As well as the link for the new podcast.
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely. Your new podcast is launching. Do you have a date for that yet?
April 13th.
April 13th. Right. So it's April 13th in the US.
Correct.
Probably the 14th for anywhere east of London, east of Ireland, I should say. That's fine. Thank you so much for that. For Catana, sharing your from page to stage. For now, bye from us.